I was almost going to forget. There we go. Okay. So as I was saying, Tasha really manages the development and delivery of MSA's education offerings. So that includes the Main Street America Institute, which I know some of you have taken advantage of, and the aspects of the Main Street Now conference. So really ensuring that high quality and innovative content and experiences that further MSA's strategic goals and build capacity for the network as a whole. So we're really excited that they're here with us today. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Tasha.
Abby, I think we just lost them.
Oh, no. Okay. That's okay. Well, let me see here. Yep. There we go. Tasha, can you hear / see it? Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Good deal. Well, I did your introduction, so I'll pass it over to you if you're ready to roll.
I am. Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing today? I feel like sometimes with webinars, it's kind of like a seance. I can't see you. Can everyone see what I'm sharing?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to be here with you today. My name is Tasha Sams. I'm manager of education programs, like I'm sure Abby said. I'm in Turners Falls, Massachusetts, but surely you can recognize that's not where I'm from. I'm from the great state of Kentucky. So I'm really excited to be here with you all today and to talk a little bit about entrepreneurial ecosystems. So I'm going to jump right in if that's cool. Is that cool, Abby?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, cool. All right. So I always like to start here because entrepreneurship is something that I'm really, really passionate about. Previous to joining Main Street America, I led a nonprofit in the state of Kentucky for the better part of a decade called the Kentucky Entrepreneurship Education Network. And there are a few things, well, quite a lot of things that I learned in that role. But this is one of the most important. So how many of you growing up did something like maybe you mowed lawns for extra cash during the summer? Maybe you babysat for some extra money. Maybe you had the quintessential lemonade stand, you and your friends out on the corner selling lemonade on a hot summer day. Or maybe you participated in a local craft market or vendor's fair or had an Etsy account or just selling what you created. Do those stories resonate with any of you? I'm seeing lots of head nods. Yeah, right? Yeah. And so I love asking this question at the beginning of the presentation because nearly everyone can relate to it. What that tells me is that entrepreneurship is pretty innate, that at some point in all of our lives, we get excited about the potential of doing something that comes from who we are, right? That really emphasizes a skill set or gives us an advantage in some way when it comes to making some extra cash. For me, my story in the 3rd grade, I was hustling Lisa Frank stationery like no one's business. And this probably kind of tells my age, but my 3rd grade teacher was not a fan of that, as you can imagine. And so instead of being like rewarded for my success, I was, of course, punished because I guess you can't resell stationery in the back of your 3rd grade classroom. But let me tell you what, I was really good at it. And that sort of spirit, that sort of entrepreneurial mindset has never left me. And I know that it's likely with a lot of you as well. And I'm sure there are some of you on this call who maybe already or who own your small business. And that's really exciting. But I want to say that something happens in our lives, right? Not all of us grow up to own a small business or to start a small business. And so I want to share some data with you that's going to help guide this conversation. And I don't want you don't have to answer out loud. You just think in your head, but take a guess. Match the percentage of small business ownership to the generation in 2023. Okay, these are just which generation owned what percentage of small businesses in the United States in 2023. And the percentages that pop up, they're not going to be tied directly to the generation that they're under. So they're all randomized. All right, we have 37%, 47%, and 16%. Okay, I'm going to give you a moment to think about it. Okay. So in 2023, baby boomers owned 37% of small businesses. Gen X owned 47% of small businesses. And millennials owned 16% of small businesses. So we see a significant generational gap when it comes to small business ownership. But there's good news, and this actually just came out a couple weeks ago. So I've been sort of on this line of knowing that there's going to be a great transition on the way between generations when it comes to small business ownership, and we're right at the edge of that. So according to Guidant Financial, they just released this report a few weeks ago. In the millennial generation, small business owners have risen by a remarkable 27% since 2023, showing their growing influence and presence in the world of small business. That means the generational divide in small business is narrowing and is happening faster than we've ever seen before. So why in the world am I telling you this, right? That's because I believe and I know that main streets serve a role in our communities that are extraordinarily critical in this sort of great transition that's about to happen. We can be the collaborative glue that connects millennial business owners to their new storefronts. We can be the collaborative glue that connects millennial business owners to business owners who are selling, or the older generation of business owners who are succeeding their business, etc. So how then can we sort of look at this from a bird's eye view? Oh, there's definitely something else we can't forget, and this is the Small Business Exit Challenge. Nearly 10,000 older adults retire each day. I know this is not news to y'all, right? You're in the front lines, you're seeing this. 78% of small business owners have told their advisors they plan to sell their business to fund their retirement, but only 30% have written a specific plan. That really stresses me out because I personally know a lot of older business owners who talk about retirement, but they have no plan whatsoever, and they have not a clear number in terms of the reality of what they're going to make on their business versus what they can, what they think they can sell in terms of perceived value. And 11% of those have a plan that indicate they will simply dissolve the business. And for Main Streeters, that's really scary because that can mean losing a business that is a generational business that brings people from all around, right? And if 11% of those indicate they're going to just dissolve their business, that's something we really need to get ahead of and to be aware of. But here's the good news. I always like to bring it back to the positive. 70% of small businesses were started by someone from that very same community. So you have everything you need. And when it comes to people, which is our greatest asset, right? So knowing that 70% of small businesses were started by someone from that very same community, that's where our focus should be when it comes to economic vitality. That's where our focus should be when it comes to starting a new business and encouraging an entrepreneurial mindset and an entrepreneurial lifestyle. That doesn't mean that we don't need to stop, attracting from the outside in, but I really think we need to put a lot more emphasis on the people that live around us every day, rather than put as much emphasis on getting those who are not there in the first place to come in, right? So how can we think about this in a way that makes sense? Because this can be very overwhelming. You might not know where to start. You might not know even how to take a look at what's going in your community to evaluate it from an entrepreneurial perspective. Well, there's this term that's been floating around now for at least the last 10 years, and it's called entrepreneurial ecosystems. I approach this from a very rural perspective. And I think that is really important to note as well. I think that this framework has been used primarily in larger cities, et cetera, but there's such a need to take this sort of perspective and apply it to a rural context because it absolutely can be applied and it should be applied. So when we talk about entrepreneurial ecosystems, don't let that phrase sort of scare you away or even sort of, push you away from it. All we're talking about is a community support network that centers and uplifts entrepreneurs and small business owners. At Main Street America, we use this framework. As you know, we center everything around place. It is the most important component in everything that we do. And all of the words and categories that you see around place are contributing factors to an ecosystem. But I want to translate this a little more. So this is our E3 approach. When we think about things like financial capital, right? All we're saying is that that's money for entrepreneurs. When we say culture in context of entrepreneurial ecosystems, all we mean is it's a positive entrepreneurial culture. Regulation, now this I think has gotten some interesting feedback because rarely do you see the words friendly and regulation put together, but we're talking about entrepreneur-friendly regulation. Social capital, that's just networking and relationships, right? And then when we talk about human capital, that's just our entrepreneur talent pool. So I find it's a lot easier to digest and work with this framework and tell other people in your community about this framework if you're using the language on the outside rather than the language that's on this in the center of these circles. And it just feels normal, right? I'm not going to walk up to someone and be like, tell me about the human capital you have in your community. That is so strange to me. But I will walk up to them and tell me about your entrepreneur talent pool. Who's coming, right? How are you cultivating that? What about retirees? What about second careerists, et cetera, right? So when you think about this framework, I really encourage you to think about it using the terminology on the outside. And moving forward through this presentation, that's how I'm going to refer to it, okay? So let's start with place. Oh my goodness, of course we're going to start with place. We're talking about real estate availability. How many vacant storefronts do you have? Do you have ground level storefronts available? Do you have second floor storefronts available, et cetera, et cetera? Launch support spaces. Do you have co-working spaces available in your community? Do you have accelerators? Are there other spaces that you've created and crafted with your community that are specific to supporting entrepreneurs? And that can look like 100 different things. You can have programming that's specific for entrepreneurs. Maybe you have a local pitch competition. Maybe you have Friday night slams at the local poetry shop or poetry gathering place, usually a coffee shop, where folks can come and share ideas they have for small businesses, et cetera, et cetera. Or, of course, we can't forget third spaces, coffee shops, breweries, local burger places, places where entrepreneurs will naturally connect and talk about the things they're struggling with in their businesses or the things they're winning at. These are just examples of all the opportunities for place that exist when it comes to entrepreneurs. And I've included some questions here for you. At the end of today's webinar, I'm going to make sure and share this presentation with Abby so that you can go through it and keep it not only to reflect on, but also to use as a resource as you start putting some framework around your own entrepreneurial ecosystems. I really am going to emphasize place. I can't talk about that enough, because when we think about place, we're thinking about avenues of entry and ways to transition through an entrepreneurial journey. We know that we have to give folks in rural communities the opportunity to start really small, right? To start really make it as easy as possible. So we're talking about things like pop-up markets when it comes to place, farmers markets, artisan events, makers, craft industries, even accelerators. And this word generally refers to, I know, a lot of things that are happening in the tech industry. But when someone says accelerator, usually I think about food trucks, for example, right? Those are accelerators too. And you may be like, well, how is that an accelerator? I have listed here an awesome example for you to research later. I've linked it out. It's from Lovington, New Mexico, and they actually have an accelerator program where small business owners who want to start a restaurant can start in the food truck, build a customer base, and then graduate into their community in a storefront that's waiting for them. And this is a whole program that they've developed. It's extraordinary. And they've gotten a lot of grants, so none of this is coming necessarily, out of pocket for the Main Street program itself. And they're getting a lot of attention because it's brilliant, right? You have a template food truck that you can allow small business owners to start in, and then you're going to support them from that food truck to opening a restaurant in your downtown. That's incredible, right? Incubator spaces. Those are so awesome because it also blends into this idea of a shared space where you can have multiple vendors within the same storefront, right? Or within the same space. A great example of that for you, I've listed here, is Batavia, Illinois. They have the sort of center of their town called Boardwalk Shops, and they're essentially little sheds where small business owners start, and some of them choose to stay because they get so much foot traffic that it would be ignorant for them to leave that space, right? They're doing just as well there as they would in their downtown, and so closely connected to their downtown that it's become a part of their downtown. And then, of course, we have brick and mortar. That's really much more the traditional access of entry. But I really encourage you to be creative in the ways that you think about getting new businesses to start in your downtown and opportunities that you can help provide to them to get started as small and slow as possible with as little cost as possible. I found this just Googling. It looks like Indiana has a platform to connect entrepreneurs. I cannot attest to the quality of this. You all would know better than me if you've explored this or logged in or even encouraged small business owners or entrepreneurs to use it. But I thought it was really cool that Indiana has a Connect End, which looks like it's just a hub for Indiana entrepreneurs. So I linked it here for you to check out when you get time. Oh, this is something we can't forget. Websites are places too. We really have to be intentional about the way our websites look, but also the way that they talk about and create spaces for different audiences in our communities. This is a great example of making sure that if an entrepreneur or small business owner comes across your website, that they have a whole tab dedicated to them, right? Where thriving businesses call home. So I've linked it here for you. So this is just one example. You can check it out and sort of see how Paducah Main Street is encouraging entrepreneurs and small business owners to connect with them and to start a small business in their downtown. If you scroll, once you get on their website, you'll see all the resources they offer, all the different opportunities when it comes to education and training they offer. And they even list quite a lot of partners who are working with them on initiatives to increase small business ownership in Paducah, Kentucky, which is really cool. Oh, I get excited about this slide. I have always thought that libraries are the original co-working spaces if they could just be, less and more yay. And believe it or not, the American Library Association agrees. They launched a pilot program last year where they worked with, I think, 14 or 15 libraries all across the nation on programming to teach librarians how to become community managers as if it were a co-working space. And so if you have a library, you have the potential of a co-working space. You don't always have to renovate and create and build anew. Sometimes I think we just forget that there are resources and places in our communities that we can utilize if we just think about them in a different or more creative way. So I've linked a lot of information here for you because if you're super rural and you have a library, that is a great place to start. I don't know about y'all, but anytime I've ever asked a librarian anything, they come back with like 50 pages of research. Can you imagine a small business owner going into a library and really sitting down with a librarian to learn about their market and their customer base and how to reach, et cetera, et cetera? I just think that there's such potential there that we've really not tapped into. And place empowers all communities. There's a metaphor I think we use a lot just as a society, and that's, make sure that everyone has a seat at the table. In reality, it is okay for different communities to have different tables, and I really even suggest that. Capitalism only works if it can spread. And if we are forcing everyone to come to the same table, it's not spreading. Right? So empowering communities to build their own tables, empowering different groups to have their own spaces is as critical to economic vitality as it is even just understanding the concept of what it means to support different communities. And so this is an example from Washington. I know that Indiana, I'm not really familiar with your indigenous communities, but I was really excited when we were in Washington to come across this because this is a Native business center specific to the Native community, and it's Native led. I think that is so cool. Sometimes we forget that not everyone needs to come to the same table, and it's totally cool to support different communities in building their own tables. And this is a great example of that. So we're moving on through the framework, right? We covered place, and now we're going to start working around the edges. And so we're going to talk about social capital. And when you see social capital, I really just want you to think networking and relationships, because that's all it is. So networking events, economic development partners, and other business support organizations, entrepreneur small business networking groups, creative meetups and hangs, business celebrations and block parties. These are all examples of events and ways to develop relationships. And I know this one may seem kind of elementary, but if there's a category I can encourage you to focus on in entrepreneurial ecosystem building, it's networking and relationships. Sometimes you just have to be the connector. Sometimes you just have to be the person that knows what's going on and to get people from point A to wherever it is that they want to go. This is a great example that I pulled from Ellensburg, Washington, for y'all to look back on when you get some time. It's a really cool event that they host quarterly called the Downtown Partner Gathering. And there's lots of cool things that they do here specifically for small business owners, even though they're inviting what they call partners. So I'm not going to go into too much detail because you have the link and you can take some time and check it out. But I think it's a great way to get some ideas for things that you can implement in your own community and maybe even implement in events that you're already hosting. This is cool. So in Missouri, we came across a Main Street, and some of you may be doing this already, but they created a private Facebook group just for the small business owners / merchants in their downtown. It's a really quick way for them to connect directly with their small business owners, to share different resources that are specific to small business owners, et cetera, et cetera. I have found that it's difficult sometimes to maintain a single Main Street social media account because you have so many different audiences that you're working with, right? And so sometimes those feeds can get really, really convoluted and just crowded. And so if you create a second social media account, and it just depends, right? This may not work for you, and that's cool. But it's another way to just really just hone in on your audience and get them the resources, materials, updates, and information that they need in the quickest way possible. And it can also help create camaraderie amongst those small business owners. Money for entrepreneurs. Oh my gosh, that one's super important, right? And when we think about money for entrepreneurs, we think about, well, how are they not only going to start their business, but keep their business going when times get hard, right? We know that people start businesses from a perspective of personal equity. We know that nonprofit entities like Main Street America can offer different grant opportunities specific to small businesses and entrepreneurs. We know there are a lot of government loans if you understand how to apply for them, right? We know that there are all kinds of other grants outside of those as well. We have private equity, angel investments, et cetera, and even financial incentive programming like pitch competitions. Honestly, I love those because I have found that if you are really good at storytelling and really good at public presentations and public speaking, you could go around your entire state, even outside of your state, if you're super motivated, and pick up as many pitch competition wins as you want, because usually that money comes with no strings attached. So a brilliant person could really fundraise entirely from pitch competitions if they were really smart about it. And here's an example I wanted to be sure and share with you because, we focus a lot on money to get entrepreneurs started, but what about when they're started and they struggle, which we see a lot happen all the time? We certainly saw that with COVID. And I came across this really cool program from Stevenson, Washington. It's called the Biz Collaboration Micro Grant Program. And it's specific. They have a part of it that focuses on when you're struggling, right? Which I think is really cool. But again, you have the link there. You can check this out. And I want to be sure to tell you that I'm sharing these resources just to give you some different ideas. By no expectation should you go out and try and recreate these programs, but hopefully it can give you some ideas as to what could work in your community and what you could do within the context of both your bandwidth and your capacity. I think this one is so important. We know a lot of entrepreneurs are first-generation entrepreneurs, and we also know that when it comes to financial literacy, that is a huge gap in our society. I came across this program in Birmingham, Alabama. I've linked it here for you. It's through Urban Impact, and they have a program to start helping business owners build credit before they even open their business. And those loans start as low as $500. It's literally just to prove that they will repay and that they have the ability to repay, and to help them build their credit so that in the future they will be eligible for higher loans, bigger loans, right? At much better interest rates. And so offering credit counseling programs and free financial literacy programs, it's critical. That doesn't mean it necessarily has to come from you as a Main Street. That means that you can plug in and find who's doing this work and promote it to the people who you know need it most. Because just because we assume that things are being taught, trust me, I'm a former educator, I can assure you that this is not being taught in the way that it needs to. And I think things like this often fall upon the responsibility of families. But if a family does not have that information to begin with, it's really unfair to expect them to be able to share that as they grow, as their children grow, etc. So again, just really thinking about this, it may apply to your community, it may not, but I certainly see that it applies in a lot of the rural communities that we work in. This is a great example of a foundation that is doing the work that I was just talking about. Foundation 47 exists in Kentucky, and it's literally a nonprofit that's dedicated to financial literacy for high school students all the way up through adulthood. And so I am sharing this example because I'm wondering if there's someone who's doing something like this in Indiana. If so, that's definitely someone you can partner with, bring into an event, host an event, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But again, these are just to share different opportunities and different ideas so that as you think about your ecosystem, hopefully some of this will click and give you some good ideas for the future. All right, positive entrepreneurial culture, moving right around the outer ring. When we think about culture, we're thinking about things like residents opening new businesses, media and promotion. Are we giving shout outs in social media when a small business has a win? Of course, we're going to show up, right? For that ribbon cutting. We're going to show up the day they open. It's likely going to be the best day of their life because it's a dream that's come true. And of course, we're going to be around them and celebrate them and cheer them on. Entrepreneur engagement, though, what's happening after that big opening event? How are you continuing to support them and cheer them on? I saw that Indiana had one of the coolest Shop Small campaigns through American Express last year. I came across y'all's PDF. I saw how you had everything organized, how you were promoting your small businesses through not just the guide, but linking them directly. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So I just wanted to be sure to give you all a shout out for doing such a good job on that Shop Small Saturday event. That's so cool. I do, though, have to make time to say this. Whenever a small business closes, no one's excited about that, right? And I can tell you that the person who's least excited about that is going to be the small business owner, because it could mean bankruptcy. It could mean that they put their entire life on the line and that's the end. They have to start over completely. It could be one of the most difficult times in someone's life. And so I say that because if we are there supporting them on the day that they open their business, we have to be there supporting them on the day that their business closes. And I think a lot of people shy away from that because it's uncomfortable. But that's part of a positive entrepreneurial culture. If the small business closes in your downtown and they've made a significant impact on your community, you have to recognize them for that. And you have to say, you know what, this might not have turned out, but we'll be there for you next time when you decide to try again. And really just make sure that they feel the love in those moments, because I have seen some really horrific things happen. And as much as, you know, this is about business, it's also about people. And that's why we're going to continue to center place in all of that, because place is so closely tied to the people that we know and love. And so I say that because if you're there on opening day, you got to be there on closing day. And that's just as important to creating a positive entrepreneurial culture as anything else. This is a great example from Missouri. This is a new business packet that they offer. I have linked it here for you. It goes through all about their Main Street, how to get involved, how to connect with other businesses. It even talks about Main Street America, us. They take it such steps further that I really think this is such a good example, and maybe even a best practice that we should model across the nation. But everything from maintaining your business, the infrastructure, the physical, etc., best business practices, being a good neighbor. I also know that small business owners are difficult. Please know that. I'm so aware. Safety downtown, public infrastructure, etc. So it's just a nice little welcome packet. And I love that it's so comprehensive and it's so easy to navigate and use. So I've linked it there for you. You'll be able to check it out later today, because I'm going to email this presentation to Abby when I'm done. Okay, entrepreneur-friendly regulation. We're talking about zoning and code practices. Probably not people's favorite thing to talk about, right? Sometimes that comes with a lot of red tape. Policies, ordinances. We want to think about low barriers of entry. We want to think about creating easy applications, decreasing development steps, or even broader resources. I love this sort of thing that this activity that we've encouraged folks to do along the way. When it comes to your community, in the process / steps that it would take to, for example, open a small restaurant in your community, if you take a Post-it note and start putting them on the wall for every single step that you would have to go through as a small business owner to open a restaurant in your community, I think you'd be stressed out just from that activity, right? Because there are extraordinary number of steps that you have to take from point A to opening your doors when it comes to regulation, especially when it comes to food, right? And so the more that we can get a handle on that process and really understand what people in our community have to go through to make it happen, the better we can support them and make it easier on them and find ways to do better. I say that because, let's see. Here we go. This is a cool example that I like to show from Nebraska. This is from Railside Main Street in Grand Island, Nebraska. And they have a program. They're struggling with housing, imagine that, right? And so if there are opportunities on second floor stories primarily, second floor buildings primarily, there's a grant program that small business owners and or property owners can take advantage of, to where the program will allow for a grant of up to $15,000 per 1-bedroom unit and up to $20,000 for a 2-bedroom unit. That's extraordinary, right? Now, you may be like, that's the coolest program in the world. Oh my gosh, what does the application look like? I share this example because the application is 3 pages long. It is so simple. It is so easy. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm keeping an eye on time, but I want to make sure that you check this out, because sometimes we are our own worst enemy. If we're putting out an opportunity and it has a 20-page application, that's really difficult for anyone. And so we have to think about barriers even to entry. And I think this is a great example of how to overcome that with a really, really simple application that's tied to a phenomenal grant opportunity. Okay, entrepreneur education and training. These are things like minority business development associations, women business centers, even local high schools have small business and entrepreneurship courses these days. I can't forget the Small Business Development Center, right? Here's Indiana, so I made sure to link it here for you. There are different colleges and universities who are doing so many cool things across the country. And I know there are a lot of colleges and universities in Indiana that are really honed in on entrepreneurship, because I had some students compete against some of your students quite a few years ago. So I'm sure those are still going strong. Access to education, extracurricular programming, and experiences. So when we think about the ways that we are training entrepreneurs and teaching them about small business and entrepreneurship, there are so many organizations in this space that really you just need to know who they are, how to connect with them, and how to get that information to the people on the ground who need it most. I did find this, though. This seems really cool. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with this or if you have heard of it, but it looks like Indiana has partnered with Started Up Foundation, for a program called Innovate Within. And it seems like it is primarily just a pitch competition, but I think they offer curriculum. I'm telling you this because I've circled it here for you to see, they have a partnerships tab. And so you can probably reach out and see if anyone at your local high school is taking advantage of this, if there's a teacher that's leading this, et cetera, and then find a way to get those students downtown. Maybe you could offer up some space where they could host the pitch competition. There are so many different things that you can do. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of this, because entrepreneurship does not have a starting age. And I know a lot of high schoolers who do not have to work because they have made such big exits when it comes to their ideas or even intellectual property. And so please don't think that you shouldn't be working with high schoolers, because they are the next generation of Main Street, right? And I think this is a cool way to kind of make that connection, if it makes sense with your programming and what you're capable of. I want to always consider bandwidth, right? So I say that because we also need to think about supporting by the stage of the business life cycle. There are so many resources to start a business. There are so many grants focused on helping people open those doors. But the stage of a business life cycle goes on for at least 5 more steps, right? And so how are we supporting businesses during their growth stage or their scaling stage? What about when they're mature and they're just coasting? What support and resources and programming can we offer them then? What about when they're declining, right? What about when things aren't going great, or they're considering selling? And then, of course, the death or the rebirth. And so when you think about programs, resources, grants, events specific for small business owners and entrepreneurs, don't forget that there's a lot more that happens outside of just getting started. And then the entrepreneurial talent pool. Here we're talking about workforce solutions, developing a pipeline. Entrepreneurship is part of career guidance, local programming, working with colleges or universities. I just went over the small business life cycle. And we cannot forget retirees and second careerists, right? There are lots of opportunities to develop and really hone in on a strong entrepreneurial talent pool. This example is from Kimmswick, Missouri. I think it's super cool. It's the Young Entrepreneurs Market. They line their historic streets with entrepreneurs 18 and younger. They set up little vendor tables, etc. It's essentially a vendor's market on Main Street, but they do it every year. And it's really exciting because those young entrepreneurs are probably going to grow up aspiring to own a business someday on that Main Street. Right? They are creating memories that will last a lifetime. And sometimes, those really come into play, those events, those moments, those big wins for kids. That's what they're going to reflect on as adults when they think about who they want to be and what they want to be in their community. And if you give them the opportunity to set up on Main Street and sell whatever it is they're selling, they're going to remember that as they grow up and as they continue to thrive in that community. So I think it's really smart of Kimmswick to do something that cool. And I can tell you that if I went to that event, I would buy something from every child. They would bleed me dry. There's no way that I would not be able to support young entrepreneurs in Kimmswick. And so we've gone through this framework, and I know it is a lot to digest. This is just an introduction. My goal in today's presentation is just to introduce you to this framework, to kind of help you get familiar with what each of these categories mean and what's included in them, and to give you some examples to reflect on and whenever you start to think about your own ecosystem. But that's not enough, right? So now that you know this framework, you got to apply it. We have this really cool tool. It's in its third iteration. So it's constantly changing, which I love. That means that we're constantly getting better, but it is a great way to assess how your ecosystem is working. This tool goes through each of the factors that I just went over, and it gives you some consideration for each. So you'll be able to tell if you're doing well in a category or if you're not doing so well. And please know, it's okay to not be doing well in one of these categories, because that means that there's opportunity for growth and improvement. I'm going to email this presentation and this resource as a PDF to you after today's webinar. I am so open to your questions. And with that, Abby, I think I'm open for questions. I know I went through everything kind of quickly, but I wanted to make sure to have time to talk with you. And you can answer this question, but I'm also open to general questions as well.
Yes. Yeah. If anyone wants to either unmute, throw it in the chat, feel free.
Tasha, I have a question just for these communities that are looking at, okay, we want to start this process.
Yeah.
Where do they begin? Like, what is that first step of, you've got the 6 circles. Which circle do they focus on first?
Yeah, always place, always. But in collaboration with that, once you see this tool, you're going to know exactly where to start. And I don't want to just like scroll through a PDF on this webinar because I'm just going to mail it out to Abby. But the way that we've created this tool is it breaks it down into questions for each category. Let me see. I'll give you an example. Hang on, just work with me. Or just be patient, rather, I guess. Okay, let's see. We'll scroll all the way down here. So place is actually the longest list of questions on the tool that you're going to receive. One of the questions is, for example, is there advanced local digital infrastructure, including cell, fiber, and Wi-Fi networks? And so you can see that even though it's placed, it's all oriented toward economic vitality and entrepreneurial opportunities. And so Abigail, talk to me after you do the assessment and let me know where you're going to start, because it'll give you exactly where you are in red, and where you are in red and orange after you've completed that tool is where you're going to want to start.
Awesome. Any other questions? I know there were some comments in the chat.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, y'all. I couldn't see the chat.
Oh, no, you're fine. I know one of them was from me. I did want to mention that. I'm glad you talked about the Connect IND and program, because I've been talking some, I know our team's been talking some with IEDC and SBDC and their team, and they have the entrepreneurial or the ecosystem navigators is what they call them. Similar to how Okra has community liaisons, these folks are regionally based and they want to partner with Main Street organizations. So I know that they all expressed a lot of really excitement and interest around that. So use them as a resource for sure. One thing I appreciated that Tasha was saying was, you don't have to have all the knowledge. I know that's the hard part when I've talked to some of you about economic vitality, is that you're like, we don't know where to start. We don't know all of, we might not have never owned a small business, and that's okay. Bring in your partners. That's the great part of Main Street is you can just be a connector, but just be the one who's able to offer that, and that's sometimes just the first step. So, and then I know Carrie shared a link from Bankable. So another financial literacy, it looks like maybe resource as well. Any other questions?
Yeah. Any other questions?
Or takeaways or?
Yeah. Did it suck?
No.
Okay, I could see.
At least not for me. I know that this is a topic that I don't have a lot of like knowledge and like very base level knowledge. And so that was a great, I feel like, way to break it down, because it can feel intimidating to talk about entrepreneurial ecosystems. And so to be able to have that more simplified and broken down, I think is really, really great. And this is something that when I send out that resource that Tasha's going to send me, bring that back to your economic vitality committee. Just take a meeting and look through it. Again, it doesn't mean you have to start implementing everything overnight, baby steps, but like, just let this maybe be a guiding light for that committee and the work that you're doing to support small businesses. So yeah, I'm seeing this was very helpful comments. So
yeah, I did want to say and make sure, what we aim to do at Main Street America, and what I want to do is I want to create and offer webinars for each of these categories, because, it's a lot to go through in an hour, and it is just an intro, just familiarizing you with the sort of the framework. But I want to do an hour or maybe more, even in a whole course on financial opportunities. I want to do an hour on networking relationships, just to continue to hone in and drill down. And so I think there's a lot coming from Main Street America that y'all are going to find helpful in the coming 6 months. I'm now overseeing Main Street America's Institute, and I can't wait to see those of you who are coming to Birmingham, because we have quite a lot of sessions that we're offering in Birmingham as well around entrepreneurial ecosystems specific to rural communities, which is where my heart is. And that doesn't mean that I have anything against larger cities, but I'm from Eastern Kentucky. So
love it. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to more of those resources, and I'm glad, sounds like many of you also found it helpful. And so I will make sure to send out this presentation. We do have a second, as you might have seen on our calendar, we have a second webinar set with Tasha for later in the year. We haven't really specifically decided what we want to go further into with this topic, because I kind of wanted to see, how did this one go? What do some of you who maybe go to Now Conference and some of the other resources that might come out? But if there's something from this that you're like, I do want to dive more into this certain thing or this certain aspect of entrepreneurial ecosystems, let us know, because that can really help define what that second webinar will do. That part 2 will be later in the year. So
Abby, can I just add
yes.
too, as our NOMs, IMs, and aspiring IMs are doing their technical assistance requests, if you're saying, hey, we want business recruitment as our technical assistance, be specific on those requests, because if it's like, hey, we need help with financial or culture, then that allows us to reach out to Main Street America as well and get some of those resources for you.
Yes, that's a very good point. Thanks for saying that, Abby. For sure. Be in general on your TA applications for NOMs and IMs, be as specific as you can, so we can pull in really specific help that can help you walk away with action items and all that good stuff. Okay, last call, just in case. I know we're ending a little early. Cool. Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you, Tasha. Seriously, this was wonderful, and I'm really excited that we'll have a part 2. I know we'll see Tasha probably running around Main Street Now Conference if you are going. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a really good rest of their Wednesday. So.
Yeah, thank you all so much for having me. It's good to be with some people. I know you may not consider yourselves the South, but I'm in Massachusetts, so I do consider you all the South right now.
I love it.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.